Hello, this is Bailey Leasure, and this is the Leisure Sports Podcast. And I'm gonna get into the sports news that's been going on around Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, and a little bit of NFL news. So I'm gonna kick it off. The Arizona Diamondbacks impressively had a very good run of games. So far, as I'm recording this, they are 6-2. That homestand they just had, they went 5-1, and which is pretty impressive. And the Diamondbacks did something they failed to do last year, which was get off to a good start. They won opening day. They were very impressive against the San Francisco Giants. Came down. I think they were down 3-0 in a couple of those games and came back to win. So very impressive for them. And then they followed it with a great series against Cleveland, and they swept the defending American League champions. So that was pretty impressive. I was going to record this yesterday, and as I recorded this, they played the Giants. They lost. One of the big factors in that game, they let 3 runs score on two infield errors. So not good for them. But 6-2 as of right now, it's still pretty good record standing right now. They play tonight again at 7:10, and they will play again tomorrow at 7:10 as well. So overall, I thought this is a big improvement. The bullpens looked really good. Pitchers have looked very good. I mean, in that series, Greinke looked like the guy the Diamondbacks when they paid $200 million for him. Shelby Miller finally had a decent start, and overall, also. Patrick Corbin looked good against Corey Kluber, who was very good last season, great in the playoffs. So starting pitching is getting on its feet again, which is great. And the hitting is obviously has been great. Paul Goldschmidt, a lot of these hitters have been very good. Chris Owens has been good. Jake Lamb, David Peralta, AJ Pollock, Tomas has been good. Jeremy Hazelbaker before the Sunday game, I think he had 8 at bats. He was 7 for 7, 7 hits, 1 walk. So it was very impressive for him to do that. So the Diamondbacks, they have some depth. Bullpens looked pretty good. I thought Jorge De La Rosa's looked great. There's still some question marks. Archie Bradley, I mean, he's the X factor for the Diamondbacks. I mean, he could be. You could use him as a starter, use him as a middle reliever, use him as a setup man, and you never know. I think he could potentially, if Rodney falls through, I think he could be their closer. So, overall, it's pretty good. The Diamondbacks, I think, they have one of the best records in Major League Baseball, and it was they 6-2, pretty good. Yesterday, they were 6-1, and they had the best record in Major League Baseball. Obviously, it's the first week, but still they're off to a good start, and hopefully they can continue on the road trip. Hopefully they can bounce back today. I believe it's going to be Robbie Ray pitching tonight. So hopefully they can bounce back after last night or yesterday's loss. So we'll see what happens there. Um, that's pretty much it for Diamondbacks news. Yesterday, the Chicago Cubs had their home opener, and it was raining. They finally kicked off. They brought Anthony Rizzo, brought out the World Series championship out onto the field. They walked down the field, and then he walked off the game 3-2 in the ninth inning against the Dodgers. So it's pretty impressive for him to do that. Moving on into NFL news, the first thing I'm going to talk about is overall the big when I did this last podcast last Monday. Was the time I recorded it. Tony Romo, Jerry Jones was to announce that Tony Romo, he's going to let teams look at him. Well, next day he shocked everybody when Tony Romo announced that he's retiring from the NFL and will be going to the CBS broadcasting with Jim Nantz. So I knew this was a possibility, so I'm not very surprised. And that kind of hurts plans for teams like Houston and Denver who are looking for quarterbacks. Although I think Denver has now come out and said, we're good on Simeon, Paxton, Lynch for now. So we'll see what happens there. But Tony Romo's had a lot of injuries in the last couple years. Whether they've been collarbone, back injuries, herniated disc or what, anything in the back. So it doesn't really surprise me that he retired. I thought he still had something left, but I think he made a statement a couple days ago saying he doesn't fully rule out returning. He's pretty sure though he's going to stay retired, but you never know, and I'm not surprised that that happened. So Adrian Peterson's he was visiting the New England Patriots. I think he visited the New Orleans Saints. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't think people pulled the trigger on Adrian Peterson because they've looked at his age. He's 32. He's coming off a not really great year. He's had some injuries. I think he will get signed by training camp, but it's just a matter of who's he's going to go to. I personally think he's going to go to Oakland. If segues great into my next news, which is the Marshawn Lynch. He visited the Oakland Raiders this past week, the facility, and he might come out of retirement. And I think that's big. I also saw a new report that if the Raiders fall through, if the talks between the Raiders fall through, the Patriots are an option. And I think that would be very ironic that he would go to New England. But also, I think if he goes to New England, I personally think that Patriots are definitely going to win the Super Bowl. I mean that's a bold statement, and they're already the favorites going into it this year. But I still think that that would signify, and it would just be very weird. The team that when he was on the Seahawks in that Super Bowl, they didn't run it on the 1 yard line, the Malcolm Butler play, but it would be very ironic. Also, speaking of Seahawks, Richard Sherman, John Schneider, their GM, he came out and talked about how there are trade talks going on around the league for Richard Sherman, and New England's one of those teams that could be going after him. Another team that because if Malcolm Butler leaves, goes to New Orleans or whatever he's going to go to, you might potentially see him go, and that would just make that defense just much better. I know there's been like statements that Sherman's not that great without Cam Chancellor, excuse me, and Earl Thomas, but I think I think Sherman, it'd be a pretty good fit, but it'd just be very ironic because the first, at least my first memories of Richard Sherman was the statements he made against Tom Brady early. I think it was the 2012 season. So we'll see what happens there. I could see it happening. It could also just be talk, and but it is what it is. It's a business. So moving on. Gonna get into Coyotes news. The Coyotes finished up their season. They finished with 70 points. It was a very emotional last game against the Minnesota Wild. Craig Cunningham, who, if you don't know who he is, he had that. He had that heart issue where he collapsed on the ice. Had to amputate. They had to amputate, I think, part of his leg. He was skating out on the before the Coyotes season finale, and he dropped the puck on the ice with Shane Doan and Martin Hansel, former Coyote. So that was pretty cool to see. That was also a very emotional game. The Coyotes lost that game. They finished with 70 points overall, 30 something wins or 30 wins, I think. That could have potentially Shane Doan. He's contemplating retirement. That could have potentially been his last game. He made some statements. He said 2 weeks ago, I thought I wasn't retired. I was 100% knowing I was not going to retire. A few days ago, I thought I was going to retire. It's going to be a wait and see moment. But if Shane Doan, if this is truly it, I think he went out. You know what? He's one of the best Arizona sports athletes of all time. There's no question about that. His loyalty, yes, there weren't that great. He didn't get that far in playoff runs. He didn't get to the Stanley Cup final, unfortunately. But if it is it, he left a landmark on. He left a huge mark on that franchise. And I think Shane Doan, I think, the loyalty the guys had. You look at the loyalty Larry Fitzgerald has with the Cardinals. Shane Doan has that just as much, probably more, because he's had the opportunity to go anywhere. He could have left. He could have asked to be traded to a contending team, but he decided, I'm going to stay here. This is where my family is. He's the last player. I believe he's the last player that's still playing in the NHL that's from the original Winnipeg Jets. because his rookie season they were still in Winnipeg. So it's overall just if this is truly it, hats off to Shane Doan. Also, another player that's probably wrapping up is Zibnak McCulloch. That was probably his last game. He's been on and off with the Coyotes for the last 10 something years. He's been with a couple other teams. He's been with Minnesota. He's been with I believe Pittsburgh is another team. But hats off to him. He's a great defenseman. And getting into that, I'm going to now give my NHL predictions for the first round. And then just overall, I'm going to evaluate as we get into the next rounds, the second rounds, the conference finals, and eventually the Stanley Cup final. I will do prediction videos for that. But the first round matchups, I'm going to go with the Eastern Conference first. First matchup, Montreal, New York. This should be good. I think this is going to be a close series. But I'm going to take Montreal in 6. Ottawa, Boston, that's going to be a great series. I kind of wish Boston was playing Montreal just because Claude Julien is now the coach for the Canadiens. The former Boston Bruins coach who took them to 2 Stanley Cup finals and won the Stanley Cup in 2011. That's one of the oldest rivalries in sports. It's the Yankees Red Sox, but that's not happening. Ottawa and Boston, I'm gonna say Boston in 7. I think it's gonna be close. Eastern Conference, you got the Capitals, the number 1 seed, the team who won the President's Trophy, against the Austin Matthews, the sensational rookie who's an Arizona native. It's definitely, I think, will be the Calder Trophy winner this after the season's done. I'm going to take the Capitals experience, though. I'm going to take the Capitals in 4. I think it's going to be a sweep, but you never know. Pittsburgh, Columbus, this is going to be a good series. Defending Stanley Cup champion Penguins. I'm gonna take Pittsburgh in 6. So Chicago, Nashville, another great series. Blackhawks, they're one of the the Blackhawks are always in talks for winning the Stanley Cup every year. They've won 3 Stanley Cups since the 2010s. So obviously, but I'm gonna take the Blackhawks in 6. Minnesota, St. Louis. This is a great series. I think this will be back and forth. I'm gonna take Minnesota in 7. Anaheim, Calgary, another good series. I'm gonna take Anaheim in 6, and then Edmonton, San Jose. I'm gonna take the San Jose Sharks in 5. So that's a good series right there. We should see some good first round hockey there. Overall with that. Final piece of NHL related news before I get into NBA news. Alex Ovechkin, as the day I did my last podcast, it was announced that the NHL will not be participating in the Winter Olympics next year. They will not be taking their Olympic break that they usually do to allow players to play in the Olympics. Alex Ovechkin said, I still plan on going to it despite what what it is. He has a lot of national pride. He thinks it's one of the biggest accomplishments to do if you're if you're a hockey player, is represent your country. And I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I agree with I agree with his comments. I think it's I think it's bad that the NHL are not participating in this. I do see the reasons why, from money and because of players getting hurt. But at the same time, the NHL, they're one of they're one of the leagues, in my opinion, in the sport of hockey. Not just the sport of hockey, but sports in general. If you play on an international level like the Olympics, or let's say the World Baseball Classic that happened, last month, it allows the sport to grow. It reaches out to different countries. And the NHL, I think, means that. I think in 2010, that game between the Olympic gold medal final between Canada and the United States, I think it got the highest ratings in not only Olympic history or hockey Olympic history, but I think it beat the Super Bowl that year that happened. So I think Ovechkin, I think a lot of players, I think some of the European teams like Sweden and Ovechkin, we'll see who follows him. And Ovechkin made these comments 4 years ago when there was talk of not participating in Sochi, but now now that they're not participating, he said that he's going to go. Who's going to follow him? So will be to be determined, but we'll see what happens there. That's it for my NHL news. Last thing I'm gonna talk about is the NBA news. Suns played a couple games this weekend. They played against the Timberwolves and the Thunder. That game between the Thunder, they prevented Westbrook from getting his triple double record. Suns won that game. They also beat the Timberwolves, I believe. So the Suns right now they're in a race between them and the Lakers for the draft lottery, bottom in the West. So I think the Suns, their tanking is a good thing from a future standpoint, but I think, they're still fighting, they're still trying to win games, but, Lakers have been on as far as my knowledge, I haven't really been following the NBA this year, but, um, I think the Lakers have been winning a lot of games, and a lot of people are like, you're costing your draft position, but, it's whatever. I think the Suns, I think if they can build the franchise around Devin Booker and some of these other guys, and the players that they can get in the draft, maybe free agency, I think they can build on that. So, and the Suns will be a playoff team in a year or two, hopefully. So we'll see what happens there. Other NBA news. I think because the NBA season, regular season is winding down. I think when there is when the full matchups are announced, I will do a prediction video for that. So, but Russell Westbrook, speaking of him, he got the record, the triple doubles record in a single. Most triple doubles in a single season. He did it in dramatic fashion when he won that he got that 3-point buzzer beater against the Denver Nuggets. So I think Westbrook's going to be the MVP this year, and also that's going to be a really great first round matchup between James Harden and the Houston Rockets. You got former teammates. That's going to be a really good series. Right now, there's some last thing I'm going to talk about. The Cavaliers, they're one game back in the Eastern Conference, and all again over the Boston Celtics. They're resting their players. LeBron James won't play in the regular season finale. They lost. Cavs lost by 3 points against the Heat. Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and LeBron James didn't play that game. That was after they blew that 25-point lead against the Atlanta Hawks. So Cavs, they're not looking good right now. They're probably it's probably going to be they're going to be the number 2 seed entering the Eastern Conference, but we'll see. I don't think I think LeBron said it's not really a problem. I could but I think it is. Home court advantage is going to be a big thing, but we'll see what happens there. That's pretty much it for the podcast. Thanks everybody for watching. If you like the video, click like on the video. If you like the content on my channel, please subscribe. Comment, give your thoughts on what you thought of the Diamondbacks. What do you think of Shane Doan? Do you think he'll retire? What do you think about Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman? What do you think is going to happen in the NBA playoffs? My NHL predictions. Do you disagree? So thanks everybody for watching. Follow me on Twitter at DailyLeisure96. And I will see you all later.